Commissioner Maddox, are you left over from the original request, or?
No, sir. This is new.
Okay.
I wanted to first compliment staff on the job that they do preparing us for our budget process and the process as a whole. I think I made this comment last time with Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Dozier and I were sitting out in the crowd back in 2009-10. How the budget process was. They were going through the budget, and it was midnight, and they weren't even done yet. But we were able to get here, go through a series of budget workshops to put together a pretty doggone good budget along with the help of staff. And so I want staff to know I appreciate all the hard work they put into it. They make it look seamless, they make it look easy, but I know it's a lot of hard work they have to put into us being able to pull this off the way we do every year without a hitch and in relatively pretty good timing. I'm not sure. We have been in a budget workshop that lasted more than a couple hours since that 2010, 2011 budget. So I wanted to give staff credit for that. And along with that, Mr. Chair, I want to go ahead and move staff recommendation options 1 through 4.
Actually, we have to take them.
Okay, well, I'll move option 1. Adopt via resolution the final FY 1920 countywide millage rate of 8.3144 mills. I believe it had to be read out, correct?
Yeah, I do have to include one little disclaimer before we get to that. Florida statutes requires the board to address the millage rate before addressing each budget. The board must vote on each millage rate and budget separately. I'll now entertain those following motions. Commissioner Maddox. Move option 1, adopt via resolution the final FY 1920 countywide millage rate of 8.3144 mills. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Option 2. So moved. Adopt via attached resolution the final FY 1920 countywide budget. Moved by Commissioner Maddox, seconded by Commissioner Dozier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Option 3.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Maddox, seconded by Commissioner Deloge. Adopt via attached resolution the final FY 1920 Emergency Medical Services MSTU millage rate of 0.5000 mils. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Option 4.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Lindley, seconded by Commissioner Deloge. Adopt via attached resolution the final FY 1920 Emergency Medical Services MSTU budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Again, I would just echo exactly the comments made by a couple of the commissioners. A groundbreaking multi-year budget plan, as well as, is it 7 consecutive years? Am I correct? 8? Thank you. Sorry. Appreciate the quick correction of not raising millage rate. Mr. Administrator, do we have speakers at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have speaker cards and this portion of the agenda. We look to have about 10 speaker cards. If you'd like, I could start going through them.
Okay, I'll just as a note, speakers, when you come to the podium, there are 3 minutes allowed for public comment. If you'll state your name and address for the record, and we appreciate you coming out tonight. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First speaker, Thomas Wakefield Wild.
Stand right over here for me. Good evening, everybody. I'm Thomas Wakefield Wildy, and this is my grandson, 4-year-old Atticus Wildy. We've come to speak quickly and briefly about the evolution that's occurring on North Monroe. I'm a commercial banker with 41 years experience, the last 20 of which has been invested in commercial investment real estate. I'd like to make 3 points, most of which are geographically based. We're from Alabama, and my first impression of Florida when moving here in 1991 was highways that were clogged with people who drove slow, surrounded by both sides by strip centers garishly illuminated by neon lights and neighborhoods with no curbs. Then we moved to Tallahassee, and I felt that we were home. I lament with my borrowers about the permitting process, but I couldn't be happier as a resident of Brandon Woods as to how Leon County and Tallahassee managed the development within the city. When we moved to town from Monticello, I wrote my notes very small and I don't see very well anymore, to Derbyshire Court, I acknowledged an additional regret and unfortunately a very short list of life's regrets, and that was that we hadn't moved there when my daughter Bethany, who's over in the corner, was 3 instead of when she was 15. That's how nice the neighborhood was and is. Since Hermine, I've been in intermittent conversation with John Daly about a grand vision for Lakeshore and the John E. Daly Northern Tallahassee Gateway. Much like the reservoir in Brandon, Mississippi, it would revitalize Lake Jackson, create a destination recreation area on and around Lakeshore, and provide a safe thoroughfare for all of those who take their lives in their hands while walking, running, or biking on Lakeshore. More relevant to our purpose today, it would include, incorporate, and connect to a well-planned, well-developed, carefully designed 1.1 miles of Segway into Tallahassee that would instantly provide every visitor in Tallahassee with the feeling I experienced when my dog jumped out of the window of our car when I slowed down to get the number off the for sale sign for 3412 Derbyshire Court. We're about to lose all that. As Rick Miner said, I'm no prude and I'm a strong advocate for personal rights, but we're already facing significant challenges in the form of the Tallahassee Mall, the Shell station on the corner of Monroe and I think it's Allen or John Knox, and various hospitality properties in the area. I'd just like to summarize that I'm an advocate of a 1-mile buffer that would prohibit a concentration of the types of businesses that would taint and denigrate the perception of Tallahassee to visitors and residents. Thank you. Go ahead, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Sean Zernis, and forgive me if I've mispronounced your last name. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm really speaking on behalf of the business of Tapestry. It's a senior living facility, and the housing that we have, that we work at, is literally across the street. The address is 2516 West Lakeshore Drive, Tallahassee, Florida 32312. We've noticed since the building of this place, it's been very odd. We used to be able to have quite a bit of prospects come in. Generally, just to give you a little quick snippet of how it works, we have family members, we call them adult children. These are the children of the grandparents, or I would perceive as grandparents or mothers and fathers. They come in, they don't have to have necessarily a appointment to come in. They could be on a drive, they could be just moving into town. They're trying to look for a place for their loved ones to stay. This is their home. This is not a place that you drop off your family members and forget about them. This is a place that they grow. We actually take care of residents. These are our family members as well. Tapestry was there before Hustler. Now, granted, if they were going to be building that place before Tapestry was built, they would have not built the place. They would have chose Tapestry to go somewhere else. We currently employ 150, 200 associates, give or take. We have at least 115 residents, give or take as well. But we've noticed a drop, not only because of the businesses around there, but because of, it's an image thing. It's literally right across the street. The first thing you see when you're pulling in there is not Tapestry. First thing you see is Hustler Hollywood, windows, mannequins. Picture that. And like the last gentleman spoke, I completely believe in business capital. I understand it helps Tallahassee thrive, but it's not logical to have businesses like that around establishments like that. It's family oriented. When the first image that you think of when you're pulling in a Tapestry is Hustler, that's actually impedes on the business of Tapestry. It's just not illogical. And I think it would behoove us to have businesses like that for future endeavors for other businesses, to plan more strategically to not be around school zones, not to be around, senior centers, recreation centers, or anything along those lines. Granted, they're going to be there. They haven't broken any laws. They did everything legally what they're supposed to. I just think of future planning, strategic planning would be, wise not to have establishments like that to present for us. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you for coming out.
Next speaker, Dana Sandridge.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak this evening. I am a resident of a neighborhood just off of Lakeshore Drive as well, off of North Monroe, and I speak tonight on behalf of many in my neighborhood. This subject is very near to my heart for a lot of reasons that I've actually felt overwhelmed trying to communicate with you in just 3 minutes. I also feel a sense of urgency that I will explain. I have some significant firsthand experience in urban decay that I would like to share with you in hopes to prevent it here in Tallahassee. I grew up in Jacksonville, and when I was 5 years old, my parents bought a home on the north side of town. They would raise 5 children in that house within walking distance from grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles who also lived in the area. That home was my childhood home. It was in that living room where I saw what Santa brought me every Christmas morning. It was where my prom date picked me up my senior year of high school. It was where my sisters and I stayed up all night telling secrets and being goofy. But over time, as our house remained stable, the neighborhood did not. It broke down. Reputable businesses left. The abandoned buildings that they left behind became makeshift shelters for the homeless or hidden spots for drug deals. We began to see more prostitutes and drug addicts on the streets, and the crime rate steadily rose, which is what I am seeing happen on North Monroe. Decades later, my parents' neighborhood is completely unlivable. It is truly a war zone. What was once a community of hardworking families that brought value to a city is now a place that is not even safe in broad daylight. I do not want to see this happen again, not in the beautiful neighborhood that I live in now. But I am troubled because I see a lot of the exact same signs that were evident in my parents' neighborhood over 20 years ago. A neighborhood does not go from a good one to a bad one overnight. It happens a step at a time. A neighborhood is also built back up one step at a time. And I believe if we do not act deliberately to set my neighborhood on a better path, it will go the way of my parents' neighborhood. And I am not going to stay around and watch it. And about the hustler. I emailed you all about this yesterday, so I won't repeat what I said in email, except for one thing. I know that the presence of an adult-themed store is a debatable topic, whether it's bad for a community or not. But I ask you this. I want you to think of any adult stores that you know of, and by adult, I will define it as a store that is selling pornography, and I'm going to ask you if any of those stores are in a thriving neighborhood that you would let your children play in. I can't think of a single adult store in a flourishing part of any town. I know that regardless of what Hustler is selling, they are bringing in revenue to the city, but I ask you today, what is the most important thing in a city? I don't think it's money. I think it's the people that live in the city, and I don't see how a store such as Hustler is good for the families in my neighborhood, particularly the women and children. Please pass an ordinance to stop more stores like it from cropping up. And my kids would really like a skate park. They told me to ask you that.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Administrator.
Maria Stevens.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I am a native Tallahassean. I'm a Tallahassee lassie, born and raised. And not only that, I actually grew up in the neighborhood that's off of Monroe Street, right behind the what used to be called the Tallahassee Mall. And I loved growing up there, and I enjoyed it so much that I have since then, as an adult, gone back there with my family because it was a good place to raise a family. But since we've been living there, there's already been crime issues coming up. There was a sex trafficking sting at La Quinta Inn, which is at the corner, catty corner from the Hollywood Hustler. And there's also an alarming concentration of sex offenders in the area already. And there's also a pre-existing sex-oriented business, Rick's Toy Box, that's only 1.2 miles away. This is the most utilized entrance to the city where this I-10 exit is, and I feel like we should make a better impression when people are coming to our capital city. It has been demonstrated that when sexually oriented businesses open off a rural interstate exit ramp, crime in the area increases 60%. And when that sexually oriented business closes, the crime rate decreases 60%, essentially returning back to its previous level. I'm also concerned as a parent, there are schools in the area, 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school. Sealy is 0.9 miles from Rick's Toy Box and 1.1 miles from Hustler Hollywood. School of Arts and Science at the center is 0.7 miles from Rick's Toy Box and 1.3 miles from Hustler Hollywood. And then there's Raw Middle School, that's only half a mile from Rick's Toy Box and 1.7 miles from Hustler Hollywood. And we need to keep more from encroaching on our schools. Please consider restrictions that would prevent sexually oriented businesses from being concentrated on North Monroe Street or anywhere else in the city. And I want to say also, as I speak to you, right now my 9-year-old is at karate class 4 doors down from Hustler Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, remember name and address for the record.
John Arnold.
John Arnold. I live at 406 Loxley Lane, which is just off of Lakeshore as well. And I just want to speak to you. I have 3 children. I have a 4th on the way. We moved to Tallahassee 4 years ago and love our neighborhood. It's been a wonderful place to raise children, but I, like the previous speakers, am concerned about the area and the developments there. And I just want to speak to you by way of an analogy. One of the factors that people point to for the success of humanity is the development and control and understanding of fire. And fire has been said to be one of the reasons for sustaining human life. It keeps people warm on a cold night, and it's good, right? But a fire in the fireplace is good, but a fire on the living room rug is bad. A fire in the fire pit is good, but a fire that falls on dry ground that hasn't rained in a month and a half, as we've had here, is bad. And it can damage homes, can destroy communities, can destroy families, can destroy the futures of children. And I want to suggest that with the opening of Hustler Hollywood, that the fire is not in the fire pit, and it's not in the fireplace any longer. And I would like to ask you to take action to prevent the spread of this fire in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Mr. Administrator.
The next speaker is Laurel Dinges, and excuse me if I got that name wrong.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am Laurel Dinges, 748 Eliezer Place. I also live in Brandon Woods off of Lakeshore Drive, and I want to add my voice to the other concerns concerning the Hustler Hollywood that recently opened on North Monroe. Others have probably stated it more eloquently than I can, but it's the same concern. I am a resident, I am a homeowner, I'm a wife, and I'm a mother of 5 children. My kids ride their bike in our neighborhood, they walk to their friend's house, they swim in our pool. I educate them at home. That is our place, our home. We moved here almost 4 years ago. Fantastic neighborhood. Love it. The people are open and friendly, and it has felt safe. But the last little while, we have seen the safety issues grow. It no longer feels safe to drive off of Lakeshore Drive to North Monroe. My oldest is 17. She's driving by herself now, and I am concerned about what time of day she drives through there. My concern is that this type of store, this adult/sex-oriented business, will continue to attract illegal and disturbing activities. And I am concerned that this will affect the safety of my family, the beautiful neighborhood and great community that I live in, the property values, and the image of our state's capital. North Monroe is the avenue into our state's capital. Our state is a fabulous place. I've lived here my entire life. As you well know, it's the 17th largest economy in the world. And the state capital, Tallahassee, lives, breathes here in Leon County? And what image are we portraying to world leaders that travel here? What image are we portraying to college students that want to come and learn and grow? So I'm asking that you would consider zoning regulations, restrictions of this type of business along North Monroe, but also in the rest of Leon County. But even more than that, it's cast a vision for Florida, for Tallahassee as the capital of this great state that would be welcoming to thriving businesses that can contribute to our society and to our economy and draw other leaders into the city. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker, Mr.
The
Administrator.
next speaker is Tara Gardner.
Thank you. I'm Tara Gardner, and I live at 3310 Robin Hood Road. Thank you for providing this forum. I've been in Tallahassee for 15 years. Grad school became full-time job, marriage, and now 3 kids. I've lived off of North Monroe for 14 of those years, and we are currently in the Lakeshore neighborhood. The community we have here through school, church, and our neighborhood is rich and resilient. Tallahassee is a special place, a city that has started to like itself and find its identity. While North Monroe has had some very encouraging moments, the trajectory has been downward. Watching the Hustler Hollywood store open up seemingly overnight was like a punch to the gut. We were already starting to avoid certain areas of North Monroe, gas stations and stores where my children and I are sure to be approached by people who have real needs that won't be met by anything I can offer from my wallet. One study said that, quote, crime, specifically illicit drug sales, is increased by the presence of undesirable businesses, including sexually oriented businesses, and even more strongly influenced by a lack of desirable businesses. Such a situation is an indication of an economically disadvantaged and socially disorganized community. The bright red Hustler sign is now the first impression for most people entering Tallahassee, and no matter what we do everywhere else, that impression is almost impossible to shake. In August, the Democrat called this area a sex store corridor. These types of businesses are a magnet for crime and deviant behavior, especially the kind of crime that is the least reported and preys on the most vulnerable populations. It won't be sudden, but crime will increase. And while you wait for certain numbers to go up or others to go down, people will leave. Good businesses will close or maybe never invest in the first place. The change in this area has been happening. Drive up North Monroe and you can see all is not well. This business is a beacon to similar ones. These businesses feed on people's weaknesses and on cities who don't take a stand. Now, I understand that this business is protected by the same rights that we enjoy, and so this is not to incite action against it specifically, but please stop the blight. We've invested too much in this city to let adult and sex-oriented businesses take over. I'd love to see North Monroe reborn, but first we need healthy boundaries. Please establish zoning restrictions throughout Tallahassee that will make the range between sex-oriented businesses as large as legally possible, ensuring that this definition would include slippery stores like Hustler. If we can prohibit them from opening within a certain range of an interstate exit or put restrictions on their signage, that's even better. I urge you to reconsider this motion. Again, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, Mr. Administrator.
The next speaker is Elena Joy Houghton.
Thank you for having me. I'm Ellie Houghton, and I live at 3314 Robin Hood Road. I'm a youth in Tallahassee concerned by the proliferation of adult stores on North Monroe Street. As a citizen in Tallahassee, it is very important for me to feel safe in my own neighborhood, which is seeing a rise in crime rates and dangerous behavior. Unfortunately, stores like Hollywood Hustler draw a crowd that makes me feel insecure and threatened in my neighborhood, a place where I should feel safe and welcome. This brings me great concern as a 13-year-old girl in the area. It was in my hopes that North Monroe Street would be refurbished or have a new name established for itself. But stores like Hustler Hollywood have brought nothing of the sort. Instead, they promote unhealthy addictions and encourage the objectification of women. It is my wish that county commissioners can make the change to give North Monroe Street the great family community it once had. Thank you for having me.
Great job. Thank you for coming out. Next speaker.
Dr. Holyfield.
Good evening, Dr. Holyfield. Name and address for the record.
Dr. Holyfield, I have a number of things to talk about, but that 3-minute time limit precludes that. But there's so many things that are going on in this community that are just totally ridiculous. We have been presented with all kinds of scams that turn out to degrade black communities. We've had, what was that thing? There was some program, Imagine Tallahassee. Do y'all remember that? It was to imagine rich people getting even richer and communities being degraded in the process. And now we have this purpose-built scam. Have you all read about that? Y'all read about what happened in Atlanta when people were displaced from their homes? Some said as many as 25%. And now you got Lorraine Osley and Whole Child and all these people pushing purpose-built. Well, it's purpose-built, all right. I think the purpose is to remove black people from their homes. And this is what is happening. It really is. And then they want money. They want money for this from the city and the county. I mean, if you look at Whole Child Leon, they now got an outfit on its board, this Southern Strategies Group. Y'all heard of them? Southern Strategies? Southern or whatever they call themselves? They got enough money to buy the whole state of Florida and then have change in the pockets. And they're on the board of Whole Child Leon. Lorraine Osley pushing this. Lorraine is the one who brought us a stand your ground gun law, which helped to get Trayvon Martin killed. So why should we even listen to Lorraine Osley? You need to look at this purpose-built scam very carefully. Very carefully. Another 30 seconds. Now, they want money from the city and the county. But yet, when the city and county said, you know, we need more money, what did they do? They cut neighborhood libraries. Think about that. You know, this is what happens in the black community. You know, y'all got books to read. Y'all got computers. You go over there to B.L. Perry Library, those kids depended on that. And yet they cut Mondays out of the library.
Thank you, Dr. Holyfield.
Well, what kind of madness is that?
Thank you for your time.
So y'all got your priorities all
Very gracious and give
screwed
you
up,
30 seconds.
and you need to straighten them out.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Final speaker, Jordan Scott.
Name and address for the record, Mr. Scott.
Yes, my name is Jordan Scott. I live at 2291 Hartsfield Way. It's 32303. I wanted to step up here. I wasn't really planning on speaking. A lot of people came up and were talking about North Monroe Street. I grew up off of North Monroe Street. And so I just want to provide, I am actually very more or less indifferent towards what happens in terms of zoning with the Hollywood Hustler. I've never heard of it. I don't go there personally. But I think that the image in the discourse that's happening around the collapse of North Monroe Street was not accurately portrayed by them, because I don't think that most people like myself that grew up off of North Monroe Street lived off of Lakeshore Drive. You know, most of the people that grew up off of North Monroe Street are working class. They're state workers or teachers who have previously or have been displaced from their jobs and have not received a raise, and in fact their wages have declined over the past 15 years. That's something that needs to be addressed if you're going to talk about the collapse of North Monroe Street. Secondly, if you look at the general economic collapse of 2008, this is where you start to see the decline. This, of course, led to lower wages for state workers and teachers as well. Leon County being teachers that have, real wages have declined. And then if you want to look at the real nail in the coffin, because you can see sort of, as I was growing up, the Tallahassee Mall was sort of collapsing. I graduated from Godby High School in 2008, just to give you an idea of where. So right as the economic recession hit. Right as the Tallahassee Mall was sort of collapsing, they built a Walmart right there, and many community members fought courageously to prevent them from turning that Sam's Club into a super Walmart. That was very courageous of them. But that is what put the nail in the coffin for the northwest side of town. So it's not the Hollywood Hustler, it's the Walmart right there, which, as probably I'm sure you're aware, Walmarts, when they come in and create jobs. For every job they create, they destroy 2 or 3. And these are all low-wage jobs. And as state workers are displaced, as the state has cut people, this is the predominant, the largest employer in the state of Florida, right? Or not state of Florida, in Tallahassee, right? And where do they live? They live on the northwest side of town. So as they displace workers, as they cut salaries, you're talking about mortgage being turned over, you're talking about foreclosures, and you're talking about a growing renting community, which is nothing against renters. I think that's where we need to go with how we're going to fix this. We need to give more rights to renters. We need to, like Dr. Hollyfield said, invest in our libraries. We need to reopen the libraries on Monday. That's where we need to go with this. We need to build community centers. So if we're going to really talk about improving the conditions on the northwest side of town, it has to be an investment in bottom-up community development, and not even this, what they're doing, I think, with the purpose-built communities. I think the evidence is very clear that this is not bottom-up development, quote-unquote development, which is, of course, the loaded term. But anyways, I will speak with some of you. I know some of you personally, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I, too, am a graduate of Godby High School, but not 2008. So, Mr. Attorney, I've done a little bit of homework on this, and I do have Commissioner Minor in queue to speak. But, Mr. Attorney, can you tell me, just as a point of reference, what is our jurisdiction, or our say-so, as it relates to this?
While I think you could theoretically craft an ordinance that would regulate the types of businesses that we've been talking about, so distances and that kind of thing. In this particular location, it's my understanding that this is all completely within the city limits. And so we would not be able to adopt a zoning or regulatory measure that applies in the city limits because they already have one. All right, so if we were going to adopt something, it would apply for zoning purposes only in the unincorporated area.
I do have a couple of commissioners in queue. Commissioner Minor, thank you for that, Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, I had spoken with the county attorney about this, as well as the speakers that had spoken today. We understand that. We understand that. This is a multi-step process. But first of all, I want to thank all the speakers that took some time out of their day to come here. It matters. Last Saturday morning, 9 a.m., I met with a large number of neighbors and business people, probably almost 20 people, on a Saturday morning, talking about the issue of Hustler Hollywood in North Monroe and what that means. Knowing that it's within the city limits and that we don't have a direct influence on that right now, but I'll get to that in a minute. This is an important issue to me, and it's an important issue to the folks that came this evening. It's an important issue to neighbors that didn't have a chance to make it here this evening. As I said last Tuesday, this is the #1 gateway to Tallahassee. More people come into this town through that interchange than any other location. The first thing they see is, at night especially, Hustler Hollywood and gleaming neon. I don't want us 15 years from now, both the county commission and the city commission, trying to figure out what we can do to address the problem of North Monroe being a declining, collapsed part of our town because of what we lacked to do tonight. We had some folks from Tapestry here. I spoke with their executive director on Saturday. He told us that had Tapestry knew Hustler Hollywood was going to be moving across the street, they never would have chosen to invest in North Monroe. Now, that's too late for them. But think of all the other businesses that are currently in process now, but the businesses after them that are not going to think about coming to North Monroe. I have an obligation, we all have an obligation to do whatever we can to make sure that our community, our county, is doing everything it can to protect the appeal of our neighborhoods and business communities. So what solutions do we have? As the county attorney said, this is within the city limits. I understand that. The folks that spoke here tonight understand that. What I would like to do is have a motion asking the county attorney to come back with options that withstand legal muster. There's plenty of legal precedent on this with regard to zoning restrictions or distance restrictions that prevent adult-oriented businesses from establishing themselves too close to one another. There's a good legal precedent for that. What I would suggest we do is if you would allow me to make that motion and have it pass, I'd like to have the county pass something and then work with the city to have the city follow suit and adopt a similar policy. Only then can we be sure that there's not going to be another store that opens between Hustler Hollywood and Rick's Toy Store on North Monroe. They're legitimate businesses, I imagine. They're following the law. They're compliant with their zoning. We can't force them to move. What we can do, though, as a commission, and the city commission can follow suit, is make sure there are not more of those stores coming into the number one gateway of Tallahassee. With that, that's my motion. I hope you all will second it and pass it. Thank you.
Motion has been made and seconded. Have a couple of commissioners in queue to speak. I'd like to hear them out before we vote. Commissioner Lindley, and then Commissioner Dozier, and then Commissioner Deloge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week when we discussed this, I don't think we had any of us fleshed out really the situation too much. We kind of felt like if you go for one kind of business, there are lots of other businesses we may not really approve of. And so the slippery slope concept I think is actually legitimate. I live very close to Monroe Street and I'm very familiar with Tapestry because a family member lived there for 3 years until recently. But I think we've known for quite some time that North Monroe is, I think someone said, heading, I can't remember what their language was, unfortunately, but has been kind of in disarray for a while. I drove out there and I saw pawn shops and payday loans and liquor stores and a lot of areas, a lot of businesses that are legitimate but that really don't overall sing the song of a beautiful gateway that people are proud to see. I mean, we know that communities are made up of a lot of different kinds of businesses. I'm willing to go along with this your motion. I wanted to, in a way, I feel like it's not quite enough. I would like to see our county maybe do a kind of inventory of what all is possibly going on now. I know the CRTPA, which is Transportation Planning Organization for this area, is looking into some improvements along North Monroe Street. There may be other things that are going on in either the city or the county or even the state that might be addressing some of the problems of North Monroe. I'm not sure, I mean, this ordinance is, this proposal you have, a while ago I was talking about abdicating our leadership. If we don't kind of step forward, maybe this is a way of leading and saying we need to do something. I'd like it to be able to do more than just be hand-wringing. And I'm not sure where we go from, addressing this specific problem and saying, well, we don't want any more. We have Rick's Toy Box and we have Hustler Hollywood now. I think there are a few others. People more in the know than I have told me there are a few others around town. So I guess it's a start. I'm always reluctant to do things that are kind of, with all due respect, kind of a window dressing in a sense or a good intention. So I guess at this point, I know that you all want something to start. You would like to see something happen. If we could include in your motion an evaluation, at least an inventory of what's possibly going on now, what other amenities might be underway, if Mayor John Daly really is serious about, now we want, who was it over there in the corner? Was talking about what, John Daly Avenue or something. I'd like to see us reach out, be a little more expansive than just directing towards this one specific business and type of business. I don't know if you would consider
Commissioner
that
Minor?
expanding
Yes,
that.
yes, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Lindley, thank you very much. Yes, I would gladly accept that as a friendly amendment.
Well, just to go beyond looking at this particular kind of zoning issue for
Yep.
this particular type of business, but to evaluate whatever kind of projects or programs or budget issues that are going on from us or other agencies, the city or the state, DOT, so we could kind of know what's actually in progress now, if anything.
Yes.
Or if we're just kind of,
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Lindley, yes, thank you. I had, my aide and I had requested a meeting with Blue Princeton County staff in the past to kind of go through exactly that, what's happening along North Monroe.
right.
And so we had a briefing of that, which was very enlightening and very impressive with some of the things that are going on. So to answer to your point, I think there are a lot of great positive things that are going on in that part of our community. And I think it would not be much work for county staff to basically take that, what they presented to us, and bring that to the county commission at some later point. Regarding your other point, yes, I believe this is a small step, right? And even the county commission doing this today is not going to solve the problem. We still need to convince the city to do the same thing.
Right.
I understand that, but what we wanted to do was not allow the problem to get worse as a stopgap. There's a lot more dreams that we have for North Monroe, and there are a lot of plans that we have. And Commissioner Daly, before he became mayor, was working on some of those. I want to pick up the mantle and continue that work. But we felt that this was urgent to do this now as one step toward a longer process, a longer vision process of making North Monroe something that we're all proud of.
And the longer vision is what I'm interested in. And could you tell me where North Monroe unincorporated area starts? I'm not actually sure if it's past the Walmart that you like so much, or this. Pardon me.
He said Fred George.
Fred George.
Yeah.
Is that sort of roughly the boundary?
That's an approximation. That's
Yeah, that's what, I mean, I was just,
But
I wasn't
it's
quite picturing.
city limits on the west side of Monroe Street.
The city limits are on the west side of Monroe Street.
Yes.
Okay. At Fred George.
But
Pretty far out. Got it.
There are variances, of course, but roughly it follows along I-10 for a good part of District 3.
Right. Okay.
Not
I was
entirely,
just
but for a
concerned
good part of
'cause
it.
I think the problems go in and out of the city limits in the county
Yeah.
area as well.
It's not a clear delineation.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Dozier and then Commissioner Deloge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of good points were made, and after our discussion last week, Commissioner Minor, I think we did get more into the discussion, and it's been a long day, of course, about the other types of businesses and kind of the right to have a business in the proximity to schools. We had gotten into that discussion, and I left feeling like we should have talked about North Monroe Street as a whole. In all the comments today, Tapestry is a perfect example. The urban decay was a perfect example. This is evidence of what has happened in some areas of Monroe Street. And I am more concerned about that and the signal this sends, which I think a lot of you mentioned. Well, I shouldn't say more concerned. I am very concerned about that. It is challenging for me, as Commissioner Lindley said, to move forward with an ordinance. And I can support the motion, but I think it is, with due respect, a lot of work on our part that isn't going to have an impact. And that's kind of, because stores like this are mostly going to be located in the city limits. And I really encourage people to talk with the city about this. Having said that, there's a whole lot of other issues, and I think was mentioned a couple times. I have, and to say this means you all might get a series of texts in the same fashion over the next year. But for the last year, I've been in discussion with a friend, Barry Beatus, who lives in the area and has been noting the panhandlers and the associated crime. He and I have gotten into deep discussions about we can't criminalize homelessness. We've talked about this for years. But there is a increasing number of people in that area that are attracting a lot of illegal activity. And I'm also understanding that, and I don't know what the reasons are, but TPD may not be able to address these issues in different places. And so there are convenience stores that are now places where they're kind of no-go areas. So a liquor store didn't make it in this location for whatever reason. And then we got Hollywood moving in. Again, this is a lot bigger than that one store. It is, I wouldn't even say the canary in the coal mine. It is more evidence of what's been happening. So I could 1,000% get behind some really concerted effort, and I appreciate the inventory. I think that's a good start, and an agenda item that looks at the current status, projects, FTOT resurfacing work. A lot of times we piggyback on that to do other improvements. Would like a status update on the Tallahassee Mall. They're still doing construction. Urban Food Market has been shut down. What else could we do in the parking lot area around Tallahassee Mall? There's a dozen different questions that we could ask about the area. And my memory, and Mr. County Administrator, I don't mean to put you on the spot here because it was a different board, but I'm pretty sure our work with transportation projects stopped at Tharp. It was more of the medians and the pedestrian crossings through 6th Avenue. Yes, okay. So we have not done the long discussed visioning or planning for the North Monroe corridor, which we could describe perhaps as a North Monroe gateway. Is that correct, to your knowledge?
There is a gateway project that's in blueprint.
We've not gotten to that yet. We've not done any of the visioning or any of the work there.
And as Commissioner Minor said, there are city, county, FDOT, and blueprint projects ongoing all along the corridor, which, again, if this motion passes, we'll be happy to bring an update back.
Okay. Well, I think, Mr. Chair, I'll bring this in for a landing, but I think this is an important issue. I mean, it is much more than just one store. I think bringing back an agenda item with the inventory and update is great, and I'm not sure if this is kosher. It's kind of odd timing, but perhaps we could get a discussion at the next blueprint meeting, particularly on North Monroe, to see if there's anything we can do in advance of the funding for construction to start looking at other elements that could help inspire good redevelopment and help address some of these issues. And that would be an opportunity to talk with our city colleagues about law enforcement issues and other things. So that would be, I don't know if it's an addition here, but I can bring it up after. But I think we should focus on the blueprint meeting. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Dozier. I think I have Commissioner Deloge, then Commissioner Proctor, and we'll land it with Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I seconded this because I agree with Rick. I think this is a kind of place we probably don't want in our community. I'll just come out and say it. But they have every right to be here, just like internet cafes did. That's the same kind of thing. I think the debate, though, should be brought up when we bring back the potential ordinances. I think we're spending an awful lot of time tonight going through nuances and what-ifing on things that we really haven't quite fleshed out. And so I'm okay with the proposal Rick has. Let's look at what our options are. Clearly, the city is going to drive this. Let's not spend too much time deciding on do something we can't impact. Let's have a discussion when it comes back as an agenda item when we have some material from the attorney that can delineate what we can and cannot do or what the choices are. I think we're just burning up a bunch of time. So
Absolutely. I think that Commissioner Minor, his original motion captured it well when he talked about options from the county attorney, and that would all be contained, as well as a study of blueprint projects and other additional projects that would occur in the area. I think all of that would be captured in that, in his motion. Commissioner Proctor and then Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just a little, Commissioner Dozier and others all chirpy chirp about a store on North Monroe. And now this leads to a need for the corridor special look at North Monroe, blah, 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 blah. Look, the other day I said that we got something more serious on South Monroe. And we have the imposition of a major rearrangement in the pairing of South Monroe being turned into a North Monroe or northbound pairing of roads, where the northbound from Gale Avenue up to Tram Road would be a one-way going north. And then we've got something that's even more egregious than this store issue, that South Adams would be turned into a one-way direction, moving from Same Point down to Gale Avenue Ridge Road. And y'all didn't have nothing to say about that. There's no need to look at that. And da-da-da-da-da-da. So I think that all of Monroe needs to be looked at. If you want to look at what kind of books can be sold on one end, so be it. But on the south end, we're talking about changing the entire direction and affecting the access of people to whatever businesses, and whether what they're doing in them businesses and all of that. I don't know what all going on in people's businesses, but the fact is they're going to be cut off. They're going to go out of business. And I wish you all would put some energy on something like that as well. So, maker of the motion, I'm asking that we not get stuck on somebody's business and what kind of business is on it. Would you look at the road and the outlying issues, as well as the near issues of access to neighborhoods, to businesses that do exist, and all of that, which is a structural dismemberment of what we have. I think that we should look at both sides. And I'd like to ask the maker of the motion to receive that as a friendly amendment, and that we're fair, not impartial to one end of North Monroe and its issues, but we have incredible issues on the south end of Monroe Street as well. So, maker of the motion, you open to that, sir?
Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Proctor, I believe that the county commission can do more than one thing at a time. I think we need to take on this issue and with its currently defined scope, and take your issue up at a different time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the stuff up here. When it's some fuzzy, uzzy stuff that comes down here and it's important to these people, and we're jumping up and down and we got to do this, we got to do that. When another group of people in this community from the south side states something that is important to them, you don't show the same reaction. You don't get ignited. You don't want to do this and that. The county attorney done set up here and told you, you can't do this kind of spot zoning. You already told him. This commissioner says, oh, you can be creative. There's something that we can do. I'm sure there's something with him. He done already told you you can't do nothing. But you're willing to go past what he's told you for something on the north end of Monroe Street. Yes, you are. So you heard what he said. He was speaking in English. I mean, that's what he was saying. So now you want him to come up with something creative to allow, just because of who came down here. But when folk on this side saying we don't want to be disrupted in our lives and our travel on Monroe Street, y'all don't see or hear anything. I'm just calling you out for what you're
Thank you, Commissioner
who you are,
Proctor.
what you're doing.
Commissioner Maddox, and then we will vote on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. In large, if you were able to come up with something and the city said something different, which one would take precedence? I'm not all in business of trying to do the city's job for them. I understand these folks coming in here and they gotta gripe about what's happening within their community. But I'm an at-large commissioner, so I have it's my business to have a gripe about what goes on in everybody's community that I don't necessarily think is advantageous to that community. I can't consciously sit here and support what we're talking about here without taking a look at the other areas of our community that may not have what you would call adult entertainment stores, but they got liquor stores on every corner and other things that are not becoming for the neighborhood. They don't have, they have food deserts within their community, and they can't find anything to eat. These are issues that I'm concerned about. And so, while I understand exactly what you're trying to do for your district, Commissioner Minor, and I understand why these good folks are coming in here and saying the things that they're saying, I can't sit here and support this motion without it being holistic in our view on what we're trying to do for our community and looking at stores that are businesses that are not becoming of us, of what we want to be as a community or as a whole. And even on the proximity issue of, okay, well, then we want to look specifically at, how close one business is to another that's within the same sector. I still say it's the same issue. There are businesses that should be regulated on other sides of towns that are close in proximity to each other that aren't going to be talked about when we talk about the issue that we're talking about here today. And so I'm gonna let the city handle the business on this one. If this is something they want to take it up, more than welcome. If you are able to come up with something, the county attorney has just said that what the city comes up with supersede what we come up with. I mean, maybe if we did a resolution or something like that, maybe we can provide support to these folks, to the city, saying that we support what they're trying to do. But I'm not at all trying to get inside the city's business. And we've said it plenty of times, the county is inside the city and the city is inside the county. But at the same time, when we look at jurisdiction, if they don't agree with what we're trying to do here or what Commissioner Minor is trying to do here, then what we're trying to do really doesn't matter. So, and I'm not in the business trying to do something that's symbolic in nature. So if it was the way I could get there, and you said you wanted to keep this thing narrowly based, and I completely understand. The way I can get there is if we took a holistic view. Every commissioner had an opportunity here because Commissioner Lindley and I are at large, so everything is ours. If every commissioner here had an opportunity to think about the stores, the businesses that were within their district, and tell the ones that they would like to restrict distances between stores, then and put that on the table, we can talk about it holistically, then maybe I can get there. But I just can't get there for one district, one store, one thought. So I wish you luck, and hopefully the city sees it your way, but I can't support the motion on the floor. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Minor, on point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Maddox, I think I understand your point. What I'm requesting with this motion is for options that would apply to the entire unincorporated area of the county, not just the unincorporated portion of North Monroe. So it would basically be an ordinance that would prohibit within a certain distance, like similar stores, concentrating in one particular area. So what I would like to do is to have the unincorporated areas adopt a policy by the county commission. Then the city would basically fill in the incorporated areas.
And again, it would not be adopted, would bring an agenda item back.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So all I'm asking for is for legal options that withstand legal scrutiny. There's plenty of precedent in it. Other communities have done it. And all I'm asking for is the opportunity for you all to review those options.
Thank you. I think the motion is clear. On point, Commissioner Dozier, and then we'll vote.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted clarification on the motion here, because are you asking for a draft of an ordinance to be brought back, or you're asking for an agenda item that has options for how to address these?
Commissioner Minor, on point.
I'm not asking for an ordinance, a draft ordinance. I'm asking simply for the policy options.
Okay.
I don't think we're there yet.
Yes.
I want legally sustainable options presented to this county commission so that we can discuss them.
I think that's all that we're considering this time. Yes.
Yes. So we have, in addition to that, Commissioner Lindley's amendment to do the inventory. I think I'm kind of smiling when Commissioner Maddox was speaking a minute ago, because we may be in a new time, and I'm celebrating that, but I'm not sure our actions have ever inspired the city to just follow our lead. We are in a new time, and we have a great collaborative relationship with the city, so that is fantastic. But it is a unique approach, so that might have caught a little off guard. So I think this kind of agenda item that you're asking for is good, but if we could also, and Mr. County Administrator, I'm going to look to you for some guidance here. Could we contemplate in that item, how do we request an item to be on the blueprint agenda in December? That would be our next joint meeting. We typically don't request items, I believe, from one body or another, but I want to make sure that we can at least reflect on that in the agenda item that Commissioner Minor has asked for, or get some other direction from you, because that, to me, is the real action-oriented meeting that we could take about the corridor.
Mr. Administrator.
The analysis that comes back to you may include in the options as part of the policy recommendations to get your direction to schedule a meeting at Blueprint to follow up on some portion of those policy items before you. So that could be included.
Okay. I can get behind the motion with the information coming back, not asking staff to draft yet, and Mr. County Administrator, if you can make sure that we can flesh out the Blueprint option in the agenda item, I would appreciate that, and I think Commissioner Minor, yes. Okay, thank you.
All right, so the motion is clear and it's been seconded. Commissioner Proctor.
Chairman, I invite this commission to start up there at the Walmart that have been talked about on North Monroe Street, to travel from that Walmart and to come at nighttime and drive south. And I challenge this commission to come back here and tell me that there's something not different when you get to Gaines Street at nighttime and how black the night becomes, how an area that disappears, not even almost visual, optically. And to say that there is not a difference shown in these areas, I want you to start at that Walmart and drive back down Monroe Street and come to Gaines Street and see if the world don't change. And you'll see why our leaving out the south end of Monroe Street to be in any kind of study dealing with Monroe, it should be included. And it's too bad you don't see that, Commissioner, but those are the facts. And I want you to drive down there. You do it tonight, you'll see it. It's very obvious. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. The motion has been made, it's been seconded, along with the amendment from Commissioner Lindley by Commissioner Deloge. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
That would be 5-2. Motion passes. Mr. Administrator, any other items at this time?
We have no further items at this time.
Okay, this is the portion of our meeting that is reserved for the attorneys, administrators, and fellow commissioner comments. Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing.
All right, and we're not going to go in order tonight. We're going to pull popsicle sticks. So the first one up is Commissioner Maddox.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing.
How'd you know? Commissioner Deloge.
One thing, I've got a number of calls from people as the result of the venue that we had the injunction on the other night about do we or don't we qualify, and are we or are we not okay. I don't want to turn this into a huge inspection tour for everybody, but I'd like staff to just think about it, and I'm not looking for anything formal, but we're going to have a way to field these issues where somebody says, I've been operating, I'm 99% certain I meet all the guidelines, I've gotten permits, I used to be a farm, whatever the case. But people are calling and saying, how do we basically verify that you are in fact a legitimate operation? So I'd like staff to just give that some thought. I've gotten 2 or 3 of these calls, I'd like to figure out a way to answer them. It's not worth having people go out and try and inspect these places. I think that opens up a whole other set of issues, but just some thought, and if we could, and you can talk to me offline, but if it's okay, I'd just like to have.
I think that's a legitimate request, Mr. Administrator.
Good enough?
All right.
Okay. And that's a great annual report. Proud to be part of the team. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've spoken enough tonight. I'm going to keep it really quick. Earlier today, we had a press conference with the announcement of purpose-built communities being launched in Tallahassee. Really a great day. I want to thank Commissioner Maddox for his leadership in getting things started, as well as the rest of this county commission for supporting it. We talk a lot about the South Side. We talk a lot about poverty. We talk a lot about 32304. But this is something tangible that this county commission, along with many others, are doing to improve South City and improve the South Side. So, Commissioner Maddox, To the rest of you, thank you very much. This is a very important day. Many years from now, as Commissioner Maddox said during the press conference, we're going to look back on this day, I think, and be very proud of the work that has been started with Purpose Built. That's real progress. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask the county administrator, if possible, if he could help us to understand a major project out back. What is the status of the current hotel? Shall it remain an eyesore? Is there any hope that wind will be put in its sails and it will float and sail on? Is it going to be a permanent fixture, incomplete effort?
Mr. Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I have nothing to report to you at this time, but we can look into it and see if we can find anything, perhaps if there's any activity over at the city.
Okay. If that project's going to remain there, it's an eyesore that probably will diminish the value of our property values here in our home, Leon County Courthouse. And if there's a chance that this county government can acquire that building, if they can't get up off the ground and limp on into the finish line, then what are the options that our community, this government or others can purchase and convert that building to something usable for community other than to remain as it is right now. Commissioners, I want to applaud staff again for a fine report tonight. Events complete winner and wonderful, wonderful job. The Orange Avenue Park, which opened the other day, which many of our colleagues were there for. We've seen pictures of it on the big screen tonight. We've gotten lots of response that's been favorable. People are really excited, and I think that it has done a lot to change the trajectory of that area, the Orange Meridian Park. Again, I think of Mr. Edward Pye, who Classic Cuts Barbershop tended to function as the mayor of that block between Meridian and South Adams Street. And of course, he was funeralized in April and did not get the chance to see the county's completion of a lot that he had a lot to say to this commission about over and over and over. Commissioners, it saddened me to note that this week we had so many fans from Southern University that came to town for a football game. And their fans lived in areas like Panama City. Their fans lived in places like Mariana, and even the Southern band had to live in Panama City. I know there were a couple of games in town, but it comes to this commissioner's understanding that the price of hotel rooms was a factor on why people from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, parked and slept in Panama City versus coming to Tallahassee. Price gouging is real when FAMU and Florida State has events. And the prices of rooms for projected prices exceed $500 per night, as FAMU's homecoming will be on October the 5th, I believe, the first Saturday in October, whichever date that is. And I think it's something that we should do. I think that is as heinous an act of price gouging as is some offensive store to some small neighborhood on North Monroe Street. And it gives our community a bad name. It happens for graduation. It happens on these football games, parent weekend, all this stuff. Something ought to be done other than what we traditionally do, which is nothing. I am requesting tonight a resolution in support of Floyd, recognizing world undefeated boxing champion Floyd Money Mayweather, who will be in our community on Sunday, as well as resolutions for sports and entertainment promoter Langston Hampton, Ricky Ross, and movie producer and entertainment promoter Stanley Walker Jr. On Sunday, the 29th. That's a request for resolution. Okay. Is that a motion? I'm offered as a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion was made. Was there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Maddox. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Then the final thing, I noted that Vince was having a great time because he said finally about 3 or 4 times. And Nick, that sounds like a Baptist preacher, finally. And he did that 3 times in his presentation today. And then, then he said, and lastly, and then he finally went and used the term, and he said, as I bring it in for a landing. And I thought that was good because, if we went from finally to lastly to as I bring it in for a landing. Note rhetorical transition, things like that, Vince. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so, I showed Commissioner Dozier moments ago the news flash that the House is seeking impeachment proceedings against the President of these United States. I asked this commission that we would also adopt a resolution supporting the impeachment of the President of the United States, and that Leon County should be the leader. We should be the first county commission to hold up the bloodstained banner of democracy, and that and we need to find out a President of the United States collaborates with a foreign power to effectuate the outcome of an American election. Something is truly, truly wrong. And as the first line of defense of democracy.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Proctor. Do we have a second? Motion denied on lack of a second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Again, I want to congratulate Florida A&M University on it being recognized as America's 7th ranked public university, HBCU, and looking forward to a resolution be shared with Florida State, and it's becoming one of the elite public universities of our nation at a commission meeting very soon. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Deloge. I'm sorry, Commissioner Dozier.
Maybe next year. We look so similar. So it happens all the time. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So only 2 items that I wanted to highlight. First, we will not meet again until after the 1st anniversary of Hurricane Michael. And there will be a lot of recognition in our neighboring counties. But there will also be, I think there are events taking shape and a campaign perhaps to recognize how much our community has helped our neighboring counties and to kind of encourage more service and donation and spending in the area. So I want to put that on our radar, and if we should get any announcements about that, Mr. County Administrator, if you could share them with the board. The hurricane recovery is woefully behind, and I believe the population decline and environmental issues and others will have an impact on our county, and that's why I really wanted to focus on that during our legislative discussion this morning, that if there's any way we can support efforts to, even though we weren't one of the hardest hit counties, I think we will start to feel the impact more in the future, although our community has been one of the strongest supporters of all of the other counties in the region. So just wanted to highlight that, and I've gotten a little bit of ribbing from a few people about mentioning hemp so much in the last couple months, but I do now want to bring this in for a landing. Thank our Office of Economic Vitality for their help and sponsorship of the event. This summit was put together in 8 weeks. It is has the potential to create jobs from the farm to the factory throughout our region, including Leon County. There are people interested in investing throughout our region, And I think this is going to be an economic development opportunity for us going forward. For this summit, a week and a day before the event, we have maxed out our attendees. We are at 203. And so and we have people coming from all over the state. So I wanted to let you all know that we are opening up for 15 more spots, I was told, just in the last hour. So I truly believe, I know this is a new industry, but I think it will have a very positive impact on our community. And I really hope that some of this information works its way back into our commission and into OEV in the future. And you start to see this. It can help the recovery efforts, to be sure, but this is an economic opportunity that if others in the state, if it's going to be legal for industrial, we need to take advantage of that as well and help create jobs. So just wanted to highlight that, and that is it for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Lending.
Are you going to let me bring home something for a landing? I have nothing. I appreciate the annual report very much, and it's been a great evening. Thank you.
I will be brief as well. Just last week, had a really incredible experience outside of the chambers here, and I wanted to compliment all of our first responders, all of our law enforcement officials, and the difference that they make in our community. Our Leon County Sheriff's Office, TPD, our SWAT team, U.S. Marshals, FDLE, anyone that wears a badge, I think, in all of the Big Bend was on hand. And in addition to that, our very own Leon County EMS services and ambulances responding to a real community emergency, and the protection and the security that they provided, not only to the community, but also to 830 plus kids who were unsure about exactly what was going on. I can't compliment their work enough, and I appreciate it. And then I will just dovetail on what everyone has said and repeat it. 8 consecutive years. I said 7. I was quickly corrected. 8 consecutive years, no millage rate increase. And I'm going to remember the 284 to 274 reduction.
There you go, man.
With that, this concludes our meeting for tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Good meeting.